Art Addicts, how's it going? It's your boy Claytanick here, your host and the creator of what you're seeing on screen. I'm doing a voiceover with this video, so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the lovely sound of my voice, please feel free to mute the video and give this a thumbs up anyway. So let's jump into it. A little bit of backstory with this piece is this is a gift for my oldest brother, who was my original inspiration to become an artist. He would create these homemade comic books titled Joey. This was his original character, and they were gory and dark and horrific, and I loved reading them. They were beautifully illustrated on lined paper with a ballpoint pen. And the backstory of Joey is that he was created by the guy that you're seeing to the right. You saw him briefly. He's got the big nose. Joey was created by him. He's this genetic experiment gone wrong, and he escaped the lab and lives in the forest, trying to be left alone to his own devices. But inevitably, some intolerant townie will come in and try to harass him, and he messily dispatches them with his trusty machete. So that's Joey's basic backstory. So I'm using Photoshop to color this. The pencils and inks were done digitally in Procreate on the iPad, and they were exported. I did the color flats kind of off camera. That's a tedious and somewhat boring, not all that fun to watch portion of it. And the primary way that I'm doing this is the lasso and airbrush technique. This dates all the way back prior to Wacom tablets being readily available and affordable on the market. So this goes back to the traditional mouse kind of technique, where you would take the lasso tool, draw a shape, and then take your airbrush tool and fill in that shape. I have a Wacom now, so the process is a lot more fun and easy. I'm primarily using 3 brushes. I'll try to put the links in the comments for what those brushes are, but for the most part, I don't design my own brushes, but I experiment constantly with other brushes that other talented artists create, and I'll normally arrive at 2 or 3 brushes that I like. This one I'm using mostly this big soft round brush. I use a splatter brush a little bit later on to do some blood textures on Joey. And there's a cell shading gel brush that I like that's got a lot of nice line variants, and it gives you very nice highlights in an anime type style. You can see I've already added some of those to the illustration. Right now I'm just using the lasso tool to define some shapes. I'll feather the edge, and using a soft round brush start to build up highlight layers. At this point in the process, I'm experimenting with a blood splatter brush. It's not specifically blood, but a splatter brush. We're just adding some details to Joey, giving his skin some extra texture, as if blood was soaked into the skin from years of murderous rampages. When it comes to my colors, I tend to go for more muted tones. I wanted something dark and gothic, and something that really said pulp horror. So I went with muted grays, blues, greens, and a little warmer textures and tones for Joey's skin. You can't really see it yet, but I also did a paper overlay. I've got a lot of scans of different textures and paper, and at the very end of the process I put that over the drawing so that the whole thing has a nice, almost moldy, weather-worn look to it. But here I'm using that gel brush that I like to add some details to Joey's eyeballs and his lips that are in desperate need of some chapstick. Here's the nefarious scientist that created Joey. His name in the original comic book, I recall, was Doctor Strange, which is obviously a no-go. That would get us a serious cease and desist from Marvel. My brother was obviously not a Marvel Comics reader at the time, so we'll have to rename him if we ever decide to explore this project in any more depth. But I'm adding some underlight from the beaker that he's holding, as if it's casting off some kind of almost otherworldly glow, like the I think I was influenced by the Reanimator films for this portion of the drawing. I loved the glowing green goo that Herbert West, that character would inject into corpses to reanimate them from the dead. And oddly, you saw the same kind. I don't know if it was an intentional homage, but I noticed that in The Substance, the recent movie starring Demi Moore, that the titular substance that she would inject into herself to become younger and prettier looked a lot like the Reanimator fluid to me. So not sure if that was intentional or not, but I really enjoyed that. Here I'm embellishing the logo a little bit using an airbrush style brush to kind of pull out the highlights in the outlines of the logo itself. By airbrush, I mean that it has an intentional speckled kind of appearance, as if the nozzle of the airbrush was a little bit splattery. Not sure how well that shows up on screen, but bouncing between that and the gel brush that I liked for most of the highlights to put some little highlights on the droplets of blood or whatever that is in the logo. Let's just say it's blood. It's a bloody logo. Blood is kind of a common theme in this one. Normally I stick with 1, 2, or maybe 3 brushes tops, but I used quite a bit more in this one. I used about 5 or 6 different brushes because there was a variety of textures that I wanted to play with. Plus, I just bought a new brush pack, and it's kind of tough to not experiment with those when you've just paid money for something. But again, I'll try to put the link to those brushes in the comments so you can check them out for yourself. For the highlights of the skulls, I used a brush that was called Stone, but it's all about what the texture looks like rather than what the brush is actually called. But I wanted something to make the skulls look aged and dehydrated and rotting, basically. I'm using a little bit lighter blue tone to kind of pull out some of those highlights. Skulls are always cool. final touches are to add some typography using Adobe Illustrator. That's my favorite program for doing that kind of work, any kind of typography, graphic design, outside of the title, which was very integrated into the design itself. The rest of it I did in Illustrator. It's editable, spell check works seamlessly. It's easy to edit, change things on the fly, non-destructively. I like object-oriented programs like Illustrator for that. 666, very, very clever. I thought First Horrific Issue was a nice fun call out to grab the reader's attention, and that more or less does it. That's my process for this. I hope my brother enjoyed it. I really enjoyed creating it, and I enjoyed showing you all the process. No piece is ever done, and it's rare that you're going to be completely satisfied with a piece, but you know, you do your best and you put your heart and soul into it, and that's it. That's the finished product. I appreciate y'all sticking along with me and watching this. Leave some comments, leave a thumbs up, and I'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.